All right, should we give it another second or just get going here?
I think we're good. We just went live. And yeah, Jerry might be late. He has his usual 7 a.m. meeting.
Right. I guess get started. It's 8:02. Call the meeting to order. First thing on the list was the executive director's report.
All right, good morning, everyone. I have provided to you all my executive director report for June. A few things that I want to highlight, more or less in response to some COVID updates and interactions with some businesses. I think despite some of the struggles that we're seeing with some of our local businesses, such as supply chain issues and the struggles of some of our local restaurants and trying to meet the guidelines and you know, I guess dealing with customers who are not being easy to work with or being compliant in the restaurants. There are some very good things that are happening with some local businesses. In the past month, you know, we've talked to businesses about sale, leaseback agreements, small business loans, and grants. And like I'd previously stated, our micro enterprise grant program, we need to use all those funds by December. So we do have a couple more projects in the pipeline to use up those funds. There are a number of local businesses that are expanding. So for example, I was able to get a tour of the new event venue at Three Willows, which is at Boondocks in the Edge in Lyons Falls. Incredible asset to Lewis County, and it's very exciting to see everything that they plan to do there. It's a 500-person event venue, and it's just going to be a really great addition to our county. And they do plan to hire on 25 to 30 new employees once they open. So that's a great thing. There is a local business that is a big asset to our county who has been looking to transition and has found a successor who is working through the finances for that. And we continue to work on that project. For example, Black River Valley Natural, they just received 2 grants to expand, add new equipment to increase capacity, increase product lines. And their business has increased and expanded immensely over the past couple of months due to COVID. So despite some of the struggles that businesses are facing, and it's really hard to predict what the economy will look like 3, 6, 9 months from now, there are some really great things happening with businesses as they look to kind of reinvent their business model, shift the way that they do business. So there are definitely some great things happening here in Lewis County. Any questions on anything else on my report?
Brittany, this is Kevin.
Yep.
On the note there about the Brick Oven Inn in Beaver Falls,
Yeah.
You've given Scott credit as being the owner of that. He's a very busy guy, and he's doing too many things at once. But that's actually Shannon who runs the Brick Oven. His wife Shannon. Yes,
both Scott and Shannon are involved, and as I had stated, I did also get a tour of Zero Dock Street Restaurant. And for those of you who maybe aren't aware, just over the county line in Carthage, Scott is the plant manager of Omnia Filtra here in Beaver Falls. And like Kevin said, just, you know, involved in a lot of things. He has put into approximately $2 million to revitalize an old factory building on the river. And that place is incredible. I mean, what another great asset added to our region. And he was able to receive a Restore New York grant because they took an old industrial building and are turning it into a restaurant banquet facility. It sits right on the river. It's right on the snowmobile trail. So yeah, there's just some really great things happening right now. And despite COVID, you know, these projects are still moving forward.
Brittany, do you know that Omnia Filtra is back up and operating?
They are, yep, they are.
Because he did some pretty incredible reworking of that plant to space people out and basically make them COVID-19 appropriate.
Yeah, and they've been working on, they purchased the building right next door. It was the old Beaverite building. And they've worked to kind of renovate that because they do have future product line expansion plans. But of course, COVID kind of slowed down that process. But that's a really great company. And Scott is he's a go-getter and he's an awesome plant manager. We really enjoy working with him.
Hi, this is Jerry. I'm joining the conference.
Jerry.
All right. Any other questions for Brittany's report? I guess next thing I believe we have Peter on the call from Omni with an update on that project.
Yeah. So first off, Brittany, everyone, good morning. I appreciate you getting me on the agenda here. So my name's Peter McAuliffe. I am representing Omni Navitas, who is a solar developer. We're pursuing and have received our municipal approvals for 2 community solar projects in the town of Denmark. It's located along East Road, kind of at the intersection of East Road and 410 there, if anyone's familiar with the town of Denmark. But it's going to be 2 projects that are going to be co-located right beside each other on the same existing property or current property that's going to be subdivided. Each array is a 2.25 megawatt solar array. I'm not sure if the board's familiar with community solar projects. The quick overview is the array will be producing electricity that will then be fed back into the grid. It'll be distributed and used where needed, and then the energy credits will go to local customers or consumers, whether they're homeowners, small business owners, or larger users such as hospitals, schools, warehouses, what have you, who will then get a discount off their electricity bill by participating in the project. But like I said, we went through the municipal approval process with the town of Denmark, the planning board there. We've gone through the utility approval process, so to speak, in doing all of the impact studies, feasibility studies with National Grid to assess the feasibility of interconnection. We received all of those approvals as well. So I am in front of you here today regarding pilot agreements for each of the 2 projects. Again, they're 2 2.25 megawatt solar arrays. It's going to be a lease agreement format with the current property owner. They are retaining ownership of the property. They're going to, I believe, still farm some of the other parts of the property, so it'll kind of be a mixed use benefit there for the current property and current property owner. But that's kind of a brief overview of the 2 solar projects and why I'm here this morning. I'm happy, Brittany or anyone else, Joe, I'm happy to answer any further questions that anyone has.
Peter, do you have the date that the environmental review was approved by the town?
Yes, it was, I believe it was March 2nd of this year. Oh, actually, excuse me, the municipal approvals were March 2nd. The seeker environmental review was done December 3rd of last year, 2019.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So Peter also joined our last finance committee meeting and provided an update there. And Brittany can chime in but they've been right on the ball in terms of the application process with us and had most everything in order at that point. So the finance committee didn't see any issues with the application or moving forward. Is any updates since then, Brittany, or anything else to add?
Nope, I think, Peter, can you explain why you decided to pursue the two parcels as two separate?
Yeah. Yeah. So we originally, doing, two 5 megawatt solar arrays. And then because of grid capacity and just the location of the property and the interconnection point, the maximum generation per interconnection point that the utility, that National Grid could handle, was that 2.25 megawatt number, which is why we had to downsize to those two projects. So it's still going to be two individual projects because that is the maximum that it can take per interconnection point. And because, because it's two individual projects, we will ultimately need and are pursuing a subdivision of the property. So each project will ultimately be on its own existing tax parcel. But that's why we were pursuing the two projects rather than just combining them into one, 4.5 or 5 megawatt project. We were limited by what the grid could take. I don't have the technical experience to tell you why they could, still handle two projects of that size, but throughout our due diligence and all the, feasibility studies that we went through with National Grid, that's what they came back to us with.
Great, thank you.
Tom, I believe you were on the finance meeting. I mean, anything else to add or any other questions from the group?
The discussion at our meeting was pretty positive. I mean, just we did cover quite a few things then, and I think that I don't see any reason not to go ahead with it.
All right, so I guess we'll move. If there's no other questions for Peter, we'll certainly thank him for his time. And when we move into the next section here, Kevin had shared the inducement resolutions to move forward with the next steps in the process on our end. So go ahead, Kevin.
On page 2 of the inducement resolution, I had a blank in there for the date of the municipal approval, and Peter has answered that date with March 2nd, 2020. So I have amended my copy of the resolution here to insert that date. I guess when you consider this resolution, please know that date has been filled in as March 2nd, 2020. And then this resolution, that when it's moved and seconded, the vote does require that it be done by roll call.
All right, Brittany, so how do we want to move right into that?
Yeah, we'll have Peter, we'll wrap up with Peter. So thank you for joining us this morning, Peter.
Thank you for having me.
And we will be in touch with you. I'll get in touch with you this afternoon.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. I appreciate it again, Brittany. Thanks for getting me on the agenda, and appreciate everyone's time. Hope everyone has a great day and a great 4th of July weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
All right, talk to you later. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so we did provide to you the two applications because they're two separate projects. He did fill out two separate applications. And we did provide to you the cost benefit analysis that Cheyenne had worked up in regard to the project and the benefits to the community. So again, what we're looking at is a pilot of 25 years, 5,000 per megawatt. And that's standard. That's the same amount that we used for the US Light Denmark project. 2% escalator. And then it goes into just some financial benefits to the community, comparing, you know, money to taxing jurisdictions, use of agricultural land versus the land with the solar project on it. There is energy savings to residents, so residents and businesses can sign on to this this project to receive those energy credits for a discount in their energy bills. And they have already paid their fee, or no, application fee to the IDA. So any other questions on this project? And like Joe said, it's very simple. This is a community solar, so they're smaller projects. They're pretty self-explanatory.
And it's been, I mean, this is, they didn't request really any like amendments or negotiations on the pilot amount compared to past. We've already approved a couple pilots that look exactly like this from for another company that has projects in Denmark and Turin. So, so with that, I guess I will move into that part of the agenda officially and ask for, we'll need two separate motions to approve these inducement resolutions. And we'll, as Kevin mentioned, we'll need a roll call vote on those.
To distinguish the two resolutions, the only real difference that I've seen between them is the address on East Road. The one would be for the 9557 East Road property, and the other would be for the 9605 East Road property. But you're right, it would take two separate resolutions.
Do we have a?
I'd go ahead and make a motion that we accept this for the first one.
I'll second it.
So now we're in discussion phase on the motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So in fact, I had a chance to have a conversation with Brittany yesterday, and I had commented on to her that on some of these matters, I feel less than adequate on. And so from the conversations we've had in the past, and from my understanding of where we are today, I think I get it. But from a governance point of view, I don't feel I can either say yes or no because I think I get it. So could maybe Joe or Kevin or both of you, in 2 minutes, could you simply state, by voting yes, what am I supporting? I know I'm supporting the project, but something a little deeper than that. And I guess, why is it that we have to even have a vote to begin with? I mean, this is an area that I feel very confused in.
You want to try, Joe, or you want me to try?
I don't know where Joe went.
I guess I'll just start talking. This is Kevin, the IDA is kind of a unique creature set up by the state of New York to do certain unusual financial benefits to developers that the local IDA determines is appropriate. One of the benefits, the primary benefit that it can offer to a developer is a pilot agreement where they do not pay property taxes. Instead, they pay a payment that is somehow tied into in this case, the nature of the project. Another benefit that it has is that the IDA can grant sales tax exclusions for purchases for the project. And a third benefit that it can grant is exemptions from mortgage tax. I don't think that's going to be necessary in this one, but what this project has requested is that they have a pilot, so they will have the ability to be exempt from property taxes, and instead they will make a payment that's pursuant to this pilot agreement. That is a unique power that pretty much only the IDAs have. Now, the governance part of it is that the board's obligation is to review these projects in order to determine whether to grant this very generous, or could be a very generous, very important financial benefit to this company. It is something that the board's obligation is to determine whether it's economically appropriate for the community, as well as not going to cause any environmental damage, that type of thing. The environmental review is done by the local government. They look at the project in depth. They have a special permit review process the town of Denmark put Omni Navitas through. And we have, I'm aware that they've approved it. I didn't know the date, but we got that now. So we are adopting that approval, that basically approving their review, and then making the decision about whether to grant these pilot benefits to this company. And I just would go back and emphasize that this is why the IDA is created, is for that purpose. It's also why the IDA, the state of New York, has very strict auditing requirements for IDA, that they have to basically document very carefully what they're doing with the funds, and have a great deal of transparency as far as the local, like for example, streaming the meeting, that type of thing. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's at least my best shot.
That was helpful, Kevin. Thank you.
If we're still in discussion phase, first I want to thank Jerry for asking that question, because I definitely benefited from that response as well, Kevin. My question relates to the benefits to the local residents that's stated. I'm just questioning, is it anyone within the town of Denmark? Is it anyone within the county of Lewis? What is determined as residents?
So there usually is a boundary in which residents can sign on. I'm not sure of how many miles out or what that radius is, but definitely residents within the town of Denmark, residents, businesses within the town of Denmark could benefit from these tax credits.
So to that information, I'm just wondering, like, whose maybe responsibility or who takes the lead on notifying the town residents of this benefit? Because I think I mentioned to Brittany when we had spoken another point, I may have, we may have received like notification in the mail or a phone call, but with all of the different, calls that you get regarding your energy supplier, they may be overlooked. So as an IDA, if we're looking out for the county, the Lewis County residents, is that our responsibility or is it the responsibility of the town?
It is, well, at this point, it's the responsibility of the company. I know with the previous company, they did a lot of outreach to get residents to sign on. I would say that it's not the responsibility of the IDA. The
Okay.
could promote. So I would have to have a discussion with the town to see how and if they could promote this. That with anything in Lewis County, people are kind of skeptical of change. So I know that's kind of a struggle for the previous company to get folks to sign on because, it's an own company. They're they're much used to dealing with National Grid. Now there's this random, solar company that's telling them that they can get a reduced energy bill. So that type of thing is still something that I think needs to be figured out within the county. Who's the best entity to promote this type of thing? Does it solely fall on the actual company, or can government get involved in that?
Right, and I think some of it's not so much promoting, just educating, the residents that this is an actual legitimate savings,
Right.
I guess. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks.
I might add that while in this case, probably this Omni would be the company that would be in charge of that. Some of these companies sublet this to other companies to actually do the distribution. So,
Darlene, this may be a partial answer to your question too, that I have recently seen on Facebook a sort of a generic community solar advertisement. And if you click on that, you enter in your zip code, and it will tell you whether you're in the zone that can be benefiting from a community solar project.
Good to know. Thank you.
And I think to add another thing to consider with these projects is land use. It's not in our jurisdiction to determine land. So, next steps in all of our solar discussions is to really, sit down with the county, talk with the towns. Some towns have passed land use policies for solar, and some have not yet. So I know with this property, it is on, in my opinion, a really beautiful parcel on the East Road. So that's just something that we as a county and municipalities have to really think about, 10 years down the road. Let's make sure that all our prime farmland, ag land, beautiful scenery isn't all taken up by solar. So some of those land use policies are still in discussion, and we will continue to have them in the county.
Hey folks, this is Joe. Apologize for that. My power is still out actually, and along with my internet, but Brittany sent me the link to get back on my phone here, so not sure what's going on. But just that part of the conversation I caught, I think, I think there's still a lot of conversation to be had with the local townships in terms of how they view and approve these projects, as well as at the county level. And unfortunately, some of the projects are going ahead before some of those discussions happen. Not that the projects are bad. I mean, I think it's a positive thing overall. It's just a matter of hopefully the towns are taking all this into consideration when they approve it, because I think, as Brittany said, that's really, it's something that we think about as individuals, but it's not necessarily the IDA's role to have a big part there. But it's certainly the towns are that's something that they need to really consider on the land use side of things.
So Joe, we had Tom and Ron make the motion and second. So we had discussion. And now we would need to do roll call if everyone is in favor.
All right, great. So let me get so I can make sure I see everyone. So we'll start with, so we had a motion and a second. Well, so Darlene, a vote.
Yes, I approve.
Jerry,
Yes.
and then do we need that? Joe is a yes. We need that from Ron and from the people that made the motion and second. Or
Yes,
they
we
are
do. Yep.
Ron
Yes.
and Tom.
Yes,
All right, thank you.
And Joe, you need to vote also.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I slipped that in there. Joe is the yes.
Oh, yes. Okay.
All right, so that was for the first one. I assume the second one. What was the address for the second one, Kevin?
That one it was just done was for 9557 East Road. And the next one would be for the 9605 East Road.
All right, we have a motion for the second.
I'll make the motion.
Darlene, do we have a second?
second.
I think that was Tom, the second. All right, vote, Ron,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
Darlene,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes,
and Joe is yes.
Joel, if I can just ask a couple questions at this point, this is Larry.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
So, if you develop, does the IDA have a template for the pilot? What the taxing, is there a host community agreement? Do you have whatever the template is going to be for this project? What the megawatt is, the payment per megawatt is going to be in the pilot? Is any of that stuff?
Yeah. So we did that. We actually we're in the process of consolidating it into one document right now. That's not finalized, but about a year ago, we developed a separate policy specific to community solar. So any project that falls under New York State's guidelines for community scale solar, which is the under 5 megawatt projects that go through this process where individual homeowners and businesses can sign on to be a community member that essentially receives solar from the project. We've been working off a uniform policy for these projects specifically, where we haven't had as much or we haven't had as developed as a process as on the large scale solar projects. But these two projects fall right in line with the ones we've already approved with US Light Energy as a community solar and that policy we have. So Brittany can chime in. I believe if it's not exactly $5,000 a megawatt, it's right around that. There was no considerations for, given the size and scale of these projects, there were no considerations made or suggested to the towns regarding a host community agreement specific to this size project when we put the policy in place about a year ago. So it's a pretty straightforward pilot. But Brittany, is it
Yeah.
exactly 5,000?
This is 5,000 megawatts, so very similar to the Denmark project. This is right in line with state's guidance. There's no host community agreement with these smaller projects. And Larry, we can discuss that more outside of the meeting as well, if you're looking for more clarification.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. All right, so moving on, we have, I don't think I missed any of this, Brittany, but we still have the meeting minutes from the June, both the June regular meeting and the June annual meeting. Those were sent out in advance. Hopefully everyone got a chance to review them, and if there's any questions.
Joe, move to approve the minutes of the last, the regular meeting and the annual meeting. This is Jerry.
Moved by Jerry. Could we have a second?
Second.
Is that Tom?
Yes.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble on my phone, but I believe we got everyone. So motion carried, thank you. And then we just add, for your information, we have the notes that went out from the Finance and Governance Committee meetings that were available to you. Were there any questions or points of clarification? Hey, all right, my wife came back in. So, all right, so the next item would be the May financial report.
Yes, we provided to you May financials, summary of the balance sheet. There's not much change from April to May. And just as a reminder, Bowers is currently doing our audit right now. So these are the year-end financials for May. Any questions on the balance sheet? Okay. Profit and loss, a few things to note on here. Contract revenue, that is something we did not budget for. That's income coming in from the CDBG Micro Enterprise Grant. And I want to remind you that by December, we will have gained about $30,000 in revenue from administering that grant. So this is obviously something that we want to continue to focus on in the future. Is, are there programs that fit within our line of work that we could administer to just bring in more revenue to our organization? Outgoing pilot payments, that was the Otis pilot that did come in May, and those have all been sent out to the respective jurisdictions. Project expenses, those include things like our website hub with Coughlin, the Lions Falls line of credit, and we recently just made sure that the Lions sale property is fully insured. So again, nothing too drastic on the May financials. Any questions?
All right, hearing questions, is there a motion to approve the May financials?
So moved.
Tom, a second.
Ron,
Ron, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries, thank you. Did you have something else on the fiscal year end, Brittany? Or was you kind of.
I think just to show the entire board, this is, not sure if this is something that we really dove deep into in previous years, is really focusing on the actual versus our budgeted year budget. And if you guys took a look at those, we did review this in finance committee. Just some things to know. The organization did much better than expected, and that's really in relation to the sale of the center or the Climax building. We have a deficit of about $5 million that it shows, and that is because when we renegotiated the Flat Rock Maple Ridge Wind project, the closing for that took much longer than expected. So while we were anticipating those pilot payments to come in through the IDA, they actually went through the county for one more year. So that was something that we budgeted for, but it didn't end up coming through the IDA in this fiscal year. So we will anticipate those payments in this current fiscal year. Any questions on the?
Yeah, Brittany, what is the time period that you expect those payments from the county to cycle through for us? Because we're now through 2 quarters. Are you expecting third quarter or fourth quarter, or do you know?
In regards to Flat Rock?
Yeah.
So those pilot payments will come through in the beginning of the year, typically January, February timeframe.
So those are the payments that went to the county, correct?
Yes, and so this is something that Cheyenne and I are actually discussing with our budget. When we look at incoming pilot payments, it shows that it's income to the IDA, and that's what it looks like on the budget, but really we're just a pass through. So we did, receive the pilot fees, the IDA charges the 1% fee, that's income to the IDA. But as far as the annual pilot payments, we are essentially just a pass through. So the company will send those pilot payments to the IDA, in which we distribute to the taxing jurisdictions.
So, and in this case, they never came through the IDA, they went directly to the county.
Yes, because the previous through the county, it was never initiated through the IDA. And that's some history background. I'm not really sure why that is. But because the closing for that took so long, we will anticipate those payments to come through the IDA this fiscal year.
So the payments, so future payments you expect to come through this year, and
Yes.
payments from last year, right?
Yep.
Okay. This may be a question worthy of consultation with our accountant to see, is from a financial record keeping point of view, is this the best way for us to do it?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's something that Shai and I talked about last week.
Okay.
And that's a conversation that I plan to have with our auditors, because it reads funny. It makes it seem like we are receiving all that money as income to the IDA, but in all reality, we're just a pass through. So I think, they do audit for IDAs, and maybe this is standard practice, but quite possibly there might be other ways to do it. So that's absolutely a question that we will ask.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry.
Brittany, to go back to, this is Calvin, to go back to your comment about the sort of the history with the windmill project and why it passed through the county and not the IDA. At the time that project was established, New York State had implemented a new program that they called the Empire Zone, and that contained a lot of benefits, sort of like IDA type benefits that local governments could do through that IDA, through that Empire Zone. That program doesn't exist anymore.
Right, okay. Thanks for that. Any other questions?
All right. Thank you for that. Good discussion and good questions. And yeah, we're going through the yearly audit process right now, so very timely to consult with our firm that we hire there. So
Yeah.
the next thing would be the employee benefits policy.
Yes. With the group health insurance, we have updated this policy a couple of times. We've gone through a few revisions, discussed with the finance committee on the best way to go about group health insurance for the future. Just a few things to note. On this policy, we clarified what part-time and full-time means, who's eligible. So 30 hours and above essentially would be eligible for group health insurance. The IDA would cover 50% of bronze level coverage. And again, we go through FOI benefits who uses Excelis, and the IDA would cover 50% of this bronze level coverage if the employee chooses to opt into a higher level coverage. We would still offer 50% of that bronze level coverage. And upon proof of additional health insurance, if someone chooses to opt out because they have another health insurance coverage, the IDA will contribute $1,200 a year to a health reimbursement arrangement, which is essentially the same thing as an HSA account. And this was a little bit of clarification with Andrew Marks from FOI Benefits. This allows us to treat all employees the same, in that if an employee has an additional health insurance coverage that doesn't accept the HSA accounts, they would be able to still opt into an HRA account. So a little bit confusing there, but that was some clarification provided by FOI Benefits. So this is what the Finance Committee has discussed. Is there any?
We spent a considerable amount of time hashing this over, and with approval and discussion through the insurance agent, this is what we came up with. So
So is there an action required by the board, or is it just informational?
We need to approve this policy.
Yeah. So the recommendation from the Finance Committee would be to move this for approval, but we're bringing it before the whole board for any other questions, and then a vote.
I would just comment, I think it's a thoughtful benefit and appropriately progressive, and would bring forward a motion to approve based on the recommendation of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Jerry. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Ron, thank you.
Yeah.
Any discussion?
I want to thank the Finance Committee for their due diligence in working with the team and bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, and with that said, all of our employee policies are completely updated. So,
Yay.
All right.
Um,
That's a mark on the calendar, Brittany.
Yep.
Thank you. And all right, so all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. All right, I know Darlene's on a time frame and we have two more things we'd like to get to quickly. I don't know which order you want to go in, Brittany, to make sure we,
We can continue in the same order.
okay. So we have a loan rating policy next.
Yes, so we are looking to adopt a loan rating policy, and this was recommended to us by our auditors. Something that we've never had in place before, and since we do manage a revolving loan fund, this is obviously a good policy to have in place. So this policy has been reviewed by the Finance Committee, Kevin McArdle, and it has been sent out to all of our loan committee members, which include outside members, a couple of bankers and accountants. This policy was taken actually from the Watertown Local Development Corporation, which they manage a very large revolving for businesses in Watertown, and this is the policy that they use. So essentially, steps to take upon delinquency, and it has us review and rate loans on an annual basis with the loan committee, which is something that in the past we haven't met with the loan committee on an annual basis to assess all the loans and rate the loans. And then it allows us, to recommend steps for the delinquent loans, and it allows us to review this policy on an annual basis. So with the loan committee, the two bankers that sit on the committee, they reviewed the rating portion, as when Kevin was reviewing it, he felt that he was not an expert in loan rating. So I had the two bankers look that over, and they recommended this policy for approval. So again, just good practice, getting our policies up to date. If we would have had this, a policy such as this in the past, maybe we could have kind of bypassed some of the delinquency that we're now facing with some of our loans, and been able to, work with them right up front. Any questions on this?
Brittany, if I could interject a little bit here, this kind of relates to that question that you asked Jerry earlier about the IDA and its purpose. The IDA is basically going to be reviewing and issuing small business loans here, and it has to do it on a equal opportunity basis. And it is very helpful to have a policy in place that the IDA can refer to and point at and say, this is why we're taking this step, because you're delinquent this much, or this is why we're rating the loan in a certain way, because we can point to this policy specifically. It is, I think, a really good idea for the auditors, but it also is, the IDA wants to avoid being seen as favoring any organization over another organization. We have to have certain standards to work from.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kevin. And our auditors are very anxious for us to get this approved. Been asking over the past couple of weeks, so.
All right, so if there's no other questions, could we have a motion for approval to adopt the loan rating policy?
I'll make a motion.
Arlene, okay, a second.
Second.
Jerry. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries, thank you. Okay, the final item under this section is the new location. Since we have a time frame to get out of our current location.
Yes, so we have until we have until October, technically, to get out of this building. We have gone to Ox and asked for an extension, and they are not allowing that at this point. If you think back over the past 6 months, we have discussed a number of different locations throughout the village of Lavelle. I mean, we've toured every location that we knew that was for lease or for rent or had those signs on the window. And, you know, really try to figure out what the best location for us would be. As you all can recall, we did take a tour of the old jail building over the winter in anticipation that we could maybe take on that project. Turns out it is definitely a much larger project than we expected because of the amount of asbestos and lead removal that needs to be done in that building. Plus everything with COVID just kind of put that on pause, and really just need to make a decision on where we want to go. So let me. So this is the location that we internally as an organization, and a couple of board members have been in more discussions with this than others. And some I think have seen the inside of these buildings, but we're looking to lease the interior outfitters and TJ's barbecue storefronts on Shady Ave. The total cost for renting the two first floors of those locations, which they do connect in the back, is $1,600 per month. And it includes about 500 square feet of storage up on the second floor above the interior outfitters building. That does include snow removal, water, sewer. I mean, we would have to pay for utilities. So some of the advantages that we feel of leasing this space is that we can still sublet to other entities. So if we look at what the other entities in the Center for Business are paying right now, that brings us up to about $1,300 in lease sublease payments directly to us. And with that said, with the concept that we were trying to complete here with the co-working and residential co-workers and office space, we can continue to do that concept in these locations, just on a smaller scale. It's obviously not as big as the building here. It's in a downtown location. We feel that, you know, we definitely want to continue to co-locate with the Chamber of Commerce. Our services are very complementary of one another, and we work very well together. And if we think about any future partnership, we really need to be in the same location. We could be a part of the downtown revitalization. So, you know, if and when we can submit the DRI grant, you know, this is something that we could be a part of. And one thing I think back to a comment from Tina Schneider last year, and after she left the board, we've had discussions. You know, if the IDA has the means and the will to kind of take on, you know, locating in these types of buildings and just starting to revitalize the downtown, then that's something that we should do. If we have the means that in the will that these building owners just don't have, then that's a responsibility that we should consider taking on. Being on this location will lead to more exposure, again, back in the downtown, back in the middle of business. There's a potential to expand into the neighboring building, which is currently vacant at this point. And the landlord is a painter and contractor by trade. He does that on the side, and he's done that for years. So, you know, one of the things that we are running into is that contractors are booked solid. We talked to a contractor in regard to paint, carpet, and some makeshift walls, and they can't even get to us until winter because, and from what they say, all the good contractors are booked solid for the rest of the year. So I think that, you know, the disadvantages of leasing the space is, yeah, we're going to have to put in some funding for renovations into this building. The very, very rough estimate that the contractor gave us was the 20,000-ish range. There was no formal estimate. That was just a very, very rough estimate. But if we are considering using the landlord, you know, he's already, you know, talked about going back and getting his insurance to become a legitimate contractor so that we could essentially pay him for his time and we could purchase supplies on our own if we wanted to go that route. And then obviously it's an old building and there has been some structural issues in the past. So just a little bit more of a look into these offices. This is the TJ's barbecue side. As you can see on the right side of the building, that used to be the Hershey building, that is currently vacant at this time and still in the hands of the family that owns it, and they're going through their estate and trying to figure out how to sell that. We envision this side of the building to be the main entrance for the chamber and economic development. This area here would be a very nice welcome area. In the back here, that's where the kitchen equipment used to be, a nice big room that we would then, gut, repaint. And then there is a hallway that connects to the interior outfitters building, which you will see here. And I talked with Jerry about this yesterday, if you are to walk in today, it is a little bit daunting. It's old, it needs new carpet, needs new paint. But if you can remember, walking in the Climax building, there were broken ceiling tiles, leaky roofs. It was daunting, it was dingy, it needed new carpet, it was musty. So I think with the eye of Cheyenne and I'm very confident that we can make it a fresh new space on a very minimal budget. Again, we don't have those exact numbers. Jeff Buckingham, who is the owner, is currently, as we speak, getting pricing on things such as carpet and paint and sheetrock. So that is where we are leaning. We do have a lease agreement that has been blessed by Jeff and Kevin. Is there any question?
What is the length of the lease?
It's an annual lease, so we will renew on an annual basis. And one thing I did talk to him about is, at this point, there's no lease to own agreement, but if we can renegotiate the lease maybe in a year, if that's an option that we want to pursue, he's very up for that. He's very interested in doing that.
Brittany, is there parking that comes with this?
There are 4 parking spots out back that do come with these buildings, but I will say there's a very big parking lot across the road. You just have to
Which is usually full.
Yeah,
and behind the movie theater. There's plenty of parking behind the movie theater as well. The village has a new, nicely paved little walking path in between the movie theater and the Adirondack Tax.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to continue to be an issue. But yeah, if we think back to where we were located before and where the chamber was previously located, that was a pretty challenging situation as well. I would argue that this is at least slightly better than our previous setup, and I think going forward, parking is definitely a consideration as we, if we in the event that we did consider ownership versus leasing in the future in the long-term development of that location. I think that's definitely something for further discussion, but I don't think it puts us in a worse position than either entity was before this.
Yeah, and any other location that we did look at, I mean, if you think of our old offices, they were very small and just not conducive to who we are and what our vision is and what we're trying to do. They were smaller, if not the same size as our old office. They just were not a good fit for our organization. So this, despite the fact that it is an old building, there will be some cosmetic facelifts to go with it. This is definitely the best location and the best scenario that we feel.
So I've had a chance to review it, and I think it's a good lease. The makes reference to a rate increase after year 1. Were there any conversations about the range of a potential increase in the lease payment? Because it's, it's incredibly wide open, and leases I've been involved with in the past, usually you map out future rate adjustments. Was there any conversation to that end?
We did not talk about any sort of increase after year one. I think there was in the negotiations, he did increase it to 1,600 because we really wanted him to include snow removal into this lease. We had to kind of beg him to do snow removal for us.
I don't know if it's a deal breaker, but it may be worth having a conversation what future lease increases will be and sort of map that out. It will be helpful for a budgeting point of view. I don't know the individual you're talking to, and by no means am I suggesting ill will at any level. But one extreme is it's working really well and everyone is pleased, and we see a 1% or 2% or a reasonable market adjustment. The other end of that is, there's a 10% adjustment in the lease, and I think that's a risk if we don't outline it within a framework in the document. With regards to the parking, this is my observation of behavior. When people go to shopping malls, when the Destiny Mall finally opens, it is nearly impossible to get a parking space and be within 3 football fields away from entrance. But when we're in the village or we're at the health system, my goodness, if we don't have a parking space within 20 feet of the door, it generates complaints. If we're really going to drive a livable downtown and a downtown that has open space, green space, is pedestrian friendly, we do have to accept that we may have to walk some bit of distance to get to a business or so the trade-off of a pedestrian friendly downtown with green spaces, very few people get to park right in front of the door. So I'm obviously talking about philosophy, personal philosophy, but I'm very satisfied with the parking. I think we have adequate parking in the village if you're willing to walk a few steps. And so I certainly have no concerns on the parking front.
Thanks for that, Jerry. And we will have a conversation with Jeff about that increase. I think that goes into potential lease to own type of agreements too, if that could be negotiated in the future.
And one last point, I think this is an opportunity for us to really acknowledge the energy and drive that our former board colleague Tina had, and her wisdom and her insights. I am convinced that the building we are leaving is a viable enterprise today because of her insistence that the board be open to buying it, taking some ownership of it, revitalizing it, and now it became a structure that could be put back into the private sector. So I completely agree with that philosophy that Brittany was espousing. If there's an opportunity for us to revitalize, even if it means, maybe for a period of time we have to move out of certain buildings. We did a lot of good for the community with the current building, coming back to life and people working in it, people coming to it. And if our success can be replicated downtown with these 2 properties, we will have done a lot of good for the village and the county.
Thank you, Jerry.
All right, thank you, everyone. So, we would like to move forward with this. Definitely a good point to have that discussion with the building owner regarding future years. With that said, is there the will here to make a motion to approve this 1-year lease?
Make that motion.
Ron, motion, a second.
Second.
Jerry, thank you. Is there any discussion?
I did ask Ron for his help with this project this summer.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And just to acknowledge, Darlene had to get off the call, but we do still have a quorum for that vote. So, all right, that closes our, or doesn't close the meeting, but closes our portion on items needing approval, with the final part today with a couple updates from Brittany and a little discussion there.
Yep, so we have just over 15 minutes left. I will be as quick as possible. Wanted to share with you all the new IDA legislation that was just passed about a week and a half ago. I shared this legislation with our finance committee as it was only proposed at that point. The new legislation allows IDAs to issue grants and loans, which, as Kevin talked about earlier, we have very specific powers that we can do. And granting and loaning of our own money has never been allowed until COVID. So just a little background on what this is allowing us to do. As far as grants, they're allowing us to create a simple grant program of up to $10,000. Eligibility is limited to small businesses and not-for-profits, but those funds can only be used for PPE or fixtures to prevent the spread. Again, this is using our own money. We have to really assess the business community to see if this is something that they need. At this point, we have been giving away PPE equipment to small businesses that have requested them in partnership with the chamber and the county. That's been going good, but there hasn't been much other need other than some of those smaller things. So I think this is something that we're going to have to continue to assess. If it's something that we want to do, we need to obviously pass a resolution stating the criteria in the program that we will initiate. On the loan program, it's technically considered a state disaster emergency loan program. It's not to exceed $25,000. There's no payments during the grace period. We cannot charge interest. We cannot charge a fee. They must repay within 1 year of the end of the grace period, which is 60 days after the state disaster emergency ends. There's no penalties for prepayment. So this is another program where it's going to take some time and effort to get this going. My thought is that we already have a revolving loan fund available. We have been pushing that out. There's really there's not a lot of interest in loans, small businesses taking out loans right now. We're really pushing the federal programs to start. But if anyone, was to be looking for a more local program, we do have a revolving loan fund available. So in a positive sense, the state is acknowledging that IDAs have very limited powers in what we can do with our money. And hopefully this is a start of, future developments for IDAs and all that we're limited to do. But the downfall, I would say, of this program is that it's very limited to what we can use the money for. You know, grants specific to PPE and loans where we cannot charge interest or fee. And there's no money coming into the IDAs, no extra funds coming in from the state to initiate these programs. It is our own money that we would be using. So we have received, you know, template examples of applications and resolutions. I'm not sure if you guys have any thoughts on if, you know, if this is something to consider. I think because it is legislation, we should recognize that it is something that is available to us. It is a power of the IDA, but whether or not we will use it, I think that's still up in the air. We still need to assess the needs of the community.
I think it would be great for finance committee discussion to maybe dig into a little, just kind of really think about what our actual resources have, or are, sorry, you know, what resources do we have? Because, you know, the bottom line is we're, even compared to some other IDAs, we're a relatively small organization.
Right.
So, you know, I think within the reason of what the resources we have available are, and how that fits in with our other longer term initiatives. To me, part of the discussion is kind of what should be done in the short term, and what at what cost to our long term ideas and programs that will ultimately, you know, that are ultimately pursuing larger economic development goals.
Right. So I will dig into some of the examples.
Go ahead and put that on the agenda for the July 21st.
Okay, sounds great. And I will provide the examples of the programs that some other IDAs have already implemented. All right, moving forward, just some project updates, solar updates. Obviously, we had a very long discussion in regard to our UTEP, and one of the next steps that we discussed taking is making sure that we are on the same page as the county. So we are initiating a meeting with county representatives to discuss not only our UTEP, but the overall solar process, and making sure that, you know, can we put together guidance for municipalities and solar developers on what the entire solar process in this county should be. You know, bringing in planning and real properties office and chairman and potentially some other legislators, county manager. And I think that'll be a good discussion in helping us to move forward with our UTEP and, you know, any potential community fund initiatives, as well as talk about some of the new siting laws that are coming down through the state that are in regards to host community agreements. So this is something that's definitely a key priority for us, you know, to get that done. You know, Joe and I have had discussions that, you know, it's good to talk through this process, because in the end, you know, we'll come out with the best policy, rather than just moving too quickly and having to change it in a few months anyways. Another issue that we ran into with the Denmark solar project with US Light Energy is on the assessment of the property taxes with the landowner. The developers are aware that the property tax for the land would increase, but I don't think anyone was aware of how much it would actually increase. So this is something we've sat down with real properties, we've talked with assessors, and moving forward, Candy Aiken, the director of real properties, will be setting up a meeting with the assessors so they can all be on the same page with how they're going to assess these properties with solar developments moving forward. When do we bring assessors into that process? And so that we as an IDA know what that assessment change will be, and we can let the solar developers know. so that they can put that into their budget. Any questions on solar? It's an ongoing topic, and we're all learning as we go. Lionsdale substation, we're continuing to work with Reenergy and an interested solar developer on a neighboring land who is looking to connect into that substation. Kevin and I have a discussion at 2 p.m. this afternoon with the developer in regard to the easement. That was not something that we acquired with the land. Reenergy still holds easement with Twin Rivers, so we'll be working through that process to see if that's a viable option for this solar project. And then lastly, some updates on Bark Eater.
Excuse me, Brittany.
Yep.
And Joe and my colleagues on the board. I'm gonna have to excuse myself at this time.
Yep.
Good report, but I have some hard stop this morning.
Yep, not a problem.
Thank you all.
Jerry, take care.
Joining us.
Okay, so yeah, thank you, Jerry, for that. And with that, we had two more little updates here.
And there are no more votes before I sign off.
Correct.
No,
Correct. Yep.
have a good day.
All right.
An update on Bark Eater. As you're aware, Bark Eater, was delinquent on their loans with us. Kevin had sent him a letter in regard to how we can pursue taking over the equipment and forgiveness for the loan. That's something that Dean suggested to us. We had the equipment kind of informally appraised. And it looks like the equipment is worth anywhere between $6,000 and $10,000. So we offered to, in exchange for the equipment, to forgive the debt to the LLC, and he would still be liable for the personal debt to the IDA. So he accepted that offer. And so Kevin and his team are working on the bill of sale to convey this equipment to us and the release to cancel towards the LLC. And we already do have some interest in that equipment, which is great. So I'm assuming, Kevin, I don't know what the timeline is for that. Maybe within the next couple of months, we would be owners of that equipment.
Well, we should have the bill of sale done. It should have it finished today.
Okay.
We can send it to Dean to sign and send it back. So
Okay.
it should be relatively soon.
Right. Any questions on that?
Is there any chance of collecting the personal part?
Still to be determined.
He has signed a confession of judgment, which is filed in the county clerk's office. So there is a judgment that's accumulating interest against him. I have not made any effort to garnish his wages. That's worth discussion in the future if that's what you want me to do. He's promised. Well, this was. I think now that this issue is resolved, I think now it becomes up to him to start making payments, which is what he's promised us for 2 years now, and we haven't seen 4 years now. Haven't seen it. So.
Yeah, and I think maybe since, like you said, this issue is being resolved, he might be more willing or more able to make those payments to us. So I think it's a discussion we'll continue to have with him.
Okay.
All right, and then the last thing on our agenda, I just want to state that I did send an email last night. So if you could just refer to your email in regard to where we are at in that process.
All right, so thank you, Brittany. Good updates with that. unless there's any other topics or questions from the group, a note on future meeting dates at the bottom of the agenda. And if there's nothing else, we would ask for a motion to adjourn.
And Joe, hang on. Can I say one more thing?
Yep.
Just want to mention, the internal priorities for us this summer: onboarding a new employee, getting our new location ready and up to speed, and finalizing that UTEP, which includes some good relationship building with municipalities. Those are internally priorities for the summer, and we have to take into account Cheyenne being on maternity leave. So again, I've said it before, it'll be a little bit crazy, but I know I went to Ron to see if he can help me with the downtown location. So I appreciate anyone's assistance and your support during this time. That's all I got.
Has the new employee accepted or?
Please refer to your email.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so we need to finalize the process with all of the candidates in consideration. So well, with that, again, any last questions, and then we'll look for a motion to adjourn. Ron, Tom, it's up to you.
Okay, so move.
Motion. Ron's unmuting himself here. Still on mute, Ron.
Just push your space bar, Ron, and it'll take you off.
Just hold up 2 fingers if you want to second the motion.
Hello.
There we
There you go.
go. Can we have a second to
Second.
the meeting, Ron? All right,
Second.
thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. And we'll have a great 4th of July weekend, and we'll be in touch in coming weeks here. So, all right,
Thank you. Happy 4th.
take care.
Stay safe, everybody.